Hello and welcome back to my August 2016 food favourites. I'm going to start with my restaurant of the month, which is Honey & Co. Honey & Co is a tiny restaurant located in Warren Street, and the co-owners have written two prominent cookbooks, I'm holding one of them up, and have been part of the very influential and very prominent wave of Middle Eastern restaurants and places to eat and cookbooks which have really swept London and been a big part of the major foodie trend in London at the moment. So it's places like Honey & Co, and I'd say probably the Palomar, Oklava, etc. They all have that kind of casual, Middle Eastern-y vibe to them, and that's been very influential. I went with friends there to Honey & Co, and the food is absolutely exquisite. I was quite worried about it because I thought, ooh, what if it's just not worth the hype? But it is absolutely delicious. You can have a set menu with lots of meze style starters, and then you go on to have a main course, which is what we did. I think the best dishes ordered by common agreement were a baked aubergine dish with rice and lamb with a tahini crust, but everything was cooked really well. And the cocktails were pretty dangerously drinkable. I had two, which is about 200% more than I usually drink. The highlight for me was a dessert they served, which is called the cookie lida or cookie lida, and it is an ice cream sandwich, and it has these two soft, decadently dark, rich chocolate cookies, slightly bitter tahini ice cream in the middle, and this slick of date syrup which has this rich caramelly flavour. It was utterly wonderful, very balanced and beautifully presented in a little wax paper envelope, just gorgeous, and such a great end to a meal. It was wonderful. If you love Israeli food and Middle Eastern food generally, I think you'll definitely be charmed and delighted by Honey & Co. My next favourite is a book, and it's Home Cooking by Laurie Colwin. Laurie Colwin was quite a celebrated food writer and novelist. She died quite young in 1992, and I've known about her for quite a long time because her writing has been recommended by Nigella Lawson. And this book, Home Cooking, is a collection of essays on different food themes, such as eggplant, or aubergine we call it in Britain, feeding the fussy, red peppers, or repulsive dinners. Colwin's writing is really warm, convivial, and it expresses this real love of cooking, eating, sharing, entertaining, an exuberance and generosity of spirit which can be missing from other celebrated food writers I've found, such as MFK Fisher, who I don't think has that lightness and warmth that just shines through in Colwin's writing. And the scenes are very intimate, domestic and relatable, but most of all what really strikes me is that they're so vivid, and in a few short sentences she really paints this wonderful, intimate portrait of meals, what food is, and really encompasses what food is in terms of its social value, and how it brings people together, which I think is wonderful. And if you want comfort and tenderness in your food writing, then you should definitely have a read of Laurie Colwin, because Home Cooking brings all of that to the table. I have actually just bought the sequel to this, More Home Cooking, and as much as I want to read it, I'm also sort of scared because these are the only two books on food writing, I believe, that Laurie Colwin wrote before she passed away so young, and it really saddens me to think I won't be able to read more once I've finished it, so it's sort of with a lump in my throat that I'm going to start the sequel to this. My next food favourite is Pip and Nut Coconut Almond Butter. I'm going to show this to you. This is obviously an empty jar. And in one of my previous food favourites videos, I mentioned having bought some Pip and Nut honey, cashew and cinnamon butter, and that I really enjoyed it. And it was on offer in Sainsbury's recently, and I stocked up on a bunch of different flavours, such as they also had a peanut and maple syrup one, and I also bought the plain almond butter, and this time it was the coconut almond butter that really drew my attention and made me really happy this month. Last month, I don't know why, but it's the one that struck my fancy. It's got a bit of sweetness and some smoothness from the coconut oil used in it, and it melds just beautifully into the slightly salty almond butter base. And it also comes in these little single serve sachets, which are very handy if you're eating them on the go. You want to snack on some nut butter in the office, for example, and I quite like taking them with me and having them just before a workout. The only disadvantage to Pippa nut butters, which are really, really delicious, really smooth, very creamy, is that they are quite expensive, and it is worth keeping an eye out for the offers, I think, for these, but they are really lovely, and they're in quite unusual flavours. So this is the coconut and almond butter. My next favourite is Waitrose recipe cards, and if you have ever shopped at Waitrose, you've probably noticed these on the stands in the entrance, and I have been collecting these recipe cards for years, basically since I discovered Waitrose in the UK. I cooked quite a few meals from these Waitrose recipe cards in August and was reminded of how helpful they are and how simple the recipes are to make. Obviously the ingredients are based on what you can pick up in usually any shop, although occasionally there are times when they will use an ingredient which you can only get in Waitrose, but since you're in a Waitrose to get the recipe card, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, and usually you can use substitutes. And they are just really, really handy for easy meals, for weeknight inspiration. They come together quite quickly, and they're quite simple to do because I think they're aimed at kind of the average day-to-day cook rather than people who are very, very keen on cooking. So they're not very complex, and when you're tired and hungry and you've just got a couple of hours after work to relax and you don't want to spend all of that time cooking dinner, these are really, really useful to have in the house. And I do prefer the ones which are not made as part of commercial partnership, but some of them, even if they are from a commercial partnership, are quite nice. The great thing about them is they're just free to pick up in store, in any Waitrose. Even if you go to just a little Waitrose, they usually have a couple of these at the front. So Waitrose recipe cards, definitely worth checking out. They always have a range of recipes. Not everything takes my fancy, not everything suits me, but usually there are one or two, and they change on, I don't know if it's a weekly or fortnightly basis, but they do change quite regularly. My next favourite almost goes without saying, and it is the Great British Bake Off, the TV baking show. And this is a genuine national TV event in the UK, and there's nothing original about looking forward to watching the Great British Bake Off. That being said, I am genuinely enjoying this series. The contestants all seem really, really lovely. We're still only 3 weeks in, but already you're getting a sense of their personalities and their interactions with one another, and you're really getting a sense of who they are. So it's lovely to get to know them more as the series progresses. And I also like that the huge, ridiculous, Herculean complexity of the tasks has been reduced a little bit. I mean, a little bit. Obviously they are still quite challenging, but they had become very, very difficult, very complex, and it's gone a little bit more back to basics, which I do like about the show. So the Great British Bake Off, I think they have record-breaking viewing figures, so I don't think that this will come as news to anyone out there. But if you haven't watched it, it's a lot of fun. It's a bit like the TV version of Laurie Colwin's writing, actually. Very warm, soothing, and comforting. No threats, no hard edges, just lovely weeknight viewing, which is kind of what you need on a Wednesday evening. You need to be soothed into the rest of the week. And my final food favourite is the Leon Meatball Box. Leon is a chain of fast food outlets, and their aim is to deliver healthy, fresh, naturally fast food. This is the paper bag that you get when you order food there. and Leon was founded by John Vincent, Henry Dimbleby and Allegra McAvady, who is a well-known chef and broadcaster in her own right. There are actually 2 Leons near my office, and the food is on the slightly more expensive side compared to what you can get locally from the supermarket. So compared to a supermarket meal deal, they are a bit more expensive. So I do tend to see a meal at Leon, a lunch at Leon, as a weekly treat rather than an everyday thing. I usually get the lamb kofta wrap, which is really, really delicious. But in August, I discovered the lamb meatball box, and I have just been loving that ever since. It comes in 2 sizes. I always get the small because that is filling enough for me. The meatballs, which are lamb, are just succulent and tender, and the tomato sauce is really rich and sweet and full of flavour, and it's on this bed of nutty brown rice, so it really keeps you full for a long time, but is also very nutritionally balanced, and I just love having this as a lunch option. And that's the Leon meatball hot box. I get the small, but it also comes in a large if you have a bigger appetite. Those were my August food favourites. I hope you enjoyed watching and have had a few ideas of what to read or eat in the coming months, and hope to see you next time in September. Bye!